Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a minute since I've last filmed. Welcome if you are new here, you haven't missed anything, but I am back and I am so excited because I have a lot of exciting content to share with you guys. And first up today, by popular demand, is my experience buying vintage Chanel from a Japanese consignment store. So if you want to see more about what bag I purchased, what my experience was like, if I recommend going through a Japanese consignment store, then let's get into it. So before we get into the video, I did have a quick little note. I have received quite a few comments from you guys asking about where some of my jewelry pieces are from, maybe what makeup I'm wearing, like what my lipstick or lip gloss is, what my clothing is. Like for instance, today I'm wearing this Anine Bing sweatshirt, which I am obsessed with. So I always make sure to leave the links for everything that I have on in the description box for each video. So I definitely recommend you checking that out if you're interested in learning more. So today's video is actually brought by you guys because I put out a request, a sort of poll on my Instagram asking what you guys wanted to see next for me, because like I said, I have quite a few videos that I want to share with you on different items, and by unanimous demand, you all said that you wanted to see this particular video, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you haven't, or if you don't follow me already on Instagram, please make sure you check me out there. I do a lot of questions and polls on my Instagram stories. I also sometimes reveal bags there before I talk about them here on this channel. So if you're interested, please check me out there. Now I know you're probably like, can we first just see the bag? And I'm right there with you. We're gonna talk about my whole experience and all of that, but let's get the fun stuff out of the way first. So the bag that I ended up purchasing from the Japanese vintage boutique is this one right here. This is a 1992 vintage Chanel classic flap in white lambskin with 24 karat gold hardware. And guys, I am obsessed. Obsessed. I mean, I wish you could feel this and just hold this in your hand. It is in such pristine vintage condition. And I'm gonna get into all of that. We're like, oh, let me make sure you guys can see this. I'm going to talk about all of that in just a second, but can we just appreciate the beauty that is this vintage goodness? And I mean, for a bag that's 30 years old, I mean, look at how amazing this is. Very minimal sort of like puffing, depuffing, and you know, there's literally no scratches on the hardware. There's no wear on the bottom. The bag also looks amazing, and I know you can't see it on camera, but there's like no wear or dyes or anything like that on the chain. And if you're familiar or maybe not familiar with a classic flap, the classic flap has on the back, it has the signature Mona Lisa little pocket right here. In the front, we have the double CC lock closure. If we go ahead and open this up, and again, a signature classic flap is the fact that it has two flaps right over here. The front flap right here, as you can see, has a zippered compartment right here, and this is just the little pocket. So it's not a pocket that goes down, it's just this little pocket right over here. And then there's a little bit of a pocket right between the two flaps right here. Then in the main compartment, it has your two little slip pockets, and then in the middle is a little lipstick compartment, main compartment right there, and then you have a little bit of a slip pocket right in the front. So that is what the classic flap looks like. And again, this is in the medium size, which is honestly, for me, is the perfect size. I know a lot of people like the small size, which is great. I mean, it's perfect, I think, if you're maybe a little bit more petite, or if you're looking for a classic flap for like something special like evening wear, or just like a quick grab and go kind of bag. But I find that the medium size tends to be like the sweet spot for me in terms of like what I'm able to carry it with, how it looks like on my frame. I just love it. And again, this is a double strap chain drop right here. So you can wear it like this, where you have the straps coming out equally, and that way you can kind of just put it over your shoulder like this. Or if you pull it through, it makes it a little bit longer, and you can still wear this over your shoulder, or you can kind of wear it crossbody if you want it as well. For me, when I wear this crossbody, I am 5'1", and when I wear this crossbody, it kind of just hits me like right like below my chest on sort of like the upper part of my stomach, which during like the summertime, or you know, when you're not wearing a lot of layers, I think works really well. When it's winter time and you're wearing jackets or you're wearing lots of layers, I think it's a little bit more difficult to wear it that way. But I mean, it's just up to you what your comfort level is. Either way, I think it's great because you have so many different wearability options with this, and some people will even like pull the chains all the way in and sort of tuck them into the bag, and the chains kind of rest like this, and then they'll kind of hold it like a pochette style. So that's also another option on how you can wear the bag. But I am just so in love with this bag. I have been looking for a white vintage classic flap for over a year now, I think. And I mean like actively looking. So actively looking for a bag for over a year is a long time to be looking for something. The reason why I wanted it in vintage, because I know that there have been white bags that have, you know, come out in some of the recent collections, but the reason why I wanted to go vintage is because I love the look of the 24 karat gold plate on the white. I just think it pops so well, because of course nowadays Chanel doesn't do 24 karat gold on their hardware. So oftentimes when you'll find in some of the newer collections with white, then they'll pair it with like a champagne gold or a light gold hardware, which can sometimes look a little bit silver depending on the light, which is beautiful. I mean, if you saw my video on my mini rectangular, that's also lambskin and that has the light gold champagne hardware. So I love it. I think it's beautiful, but there's something really special and different about the 24 karat gold against the white. So that was really something that I wanted, which is why when I saw this, I was just like, I have to get it. Aside from the fact, of course, it's just, you know, in beautiful condition. So happy with this bag. I got this bag from a Japanese consignment boutique online. I didn't go to Japan. I mean, I would love to go back to Japan. I bought this through the luxury boutique by the name of Qoo Vintage. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but for the sake of this video, we'll call it Qoo Vintage. And they're a pretty reputable brand. I believe they've been around for about 10 or so years, and they had, or maybe still have, a showroom in Japan. They have their online store, and then they also have a showroom, I believe, in Hong Kong. And they're really well known for selling a lot of vintage items, like this vintage Chanel, they have vintage Louis Vuitton and Hermes, and you know, they have just a variety of luxury items there. I came across their brand really through social media. Now, I'm not gonna go into the whole like vintage 101 buying guide, because I did do a little bit of that in my previous video. So if you want to learn a little bit more about my tips and tricks on finding the best, most reputable vintage shopping brands or resellers, then check out this video right here where I talk about my first ever vintage Chanel purchase, and that has some of those tips for you. But basically what I did was I saw them online, I noticed that they had recorded a live video, right? So obviously I'm here in the States, they're in Japan. When they went live, I was sleeping, right? So I obviously didn't see it, but the next day I saw that they had posted a live recording, so I thought, why don't I, you know, check it out, let's see what they have, just curious. And so the way that they record their lives is that they'll have their salesperson in front of like a bookshelf or a rack that has all of their new items, all of the items that they're going to be talking about in the live. And so when the video started, right away I noticed in the back this bag sitting on a shelf. Now, like I said, I have been looking for a white vintage Chanel for like a minute, right? And I wanted one in lambskin and obviously the gold hardware. So as soon as I kind of saw that in the background, I was intrigued. Started watching the live, and then obviously I got to the point where they started talking about this bag. And the person or the sales associate that was talking about the bag, she herself was so excited about this because she said, this is a really special bag that we have in, because this bag is from 1992 and it's never been used. Never been used. And I was like, what? Never been used? What are you talking about? And she started doing some close-ups of the bag, and then she was like, it's literally brand new. It still has its tags. And I mean, if I show you right over here in the front flap, I'll just unzip this for you. The bag still has its original tag of when the bag was purchased in 1992. So here's the tag. Here it is. I mean, crazy. Like, the tag is still on the bag. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, when do you see vintage bags that have their tags still on them? Now, do I think that this person, whoever bought this, never ever used it? I mean, I'm sure the person who bought it maybe, you know, used it once or twice, but for the most part, it's very obvious that whoever bought this never used it or never really used it, because the bag, like I mentioned earlier, there's no scratching on the hardware at all. Let's focus. There's no scratching on the hardware at all. There's no wear and tear on the corners at all. I mean, and that's usually the first place that you'll see wear and tear. There's no, because this is lambskin. Lambskin, as I've talked about in previous videos, you'll notice that sometimes you'll get a little bit of rubbing where the bag is kind of rubbing up against your clothing. There's none of that anywhere, especially in high traffic areas like this Mona Lisa pocket, obviously on the front. Nothing like that. The most that you'll see in this bag, and I mean, for the most part, the bag is still even really fluffy. I know with the light that's coming in, it probably doesn't look as fluffy in real life, but the bag is still pretty puffy. In the back as well, it's pretty puffy. Honestly, looks like a brand new bag. I mean, if you weren't familiar with Chanel, or if you didn't know that, you know, Chanel bags brand new are like extra puffy, if you didn't know any of that and you just saw this bag, you would think that this was like a brand new bag, because in essence it is. Also, what I loved about this bag is that when I was doing research on obviously looking at other white vintage Chanel bags, every time I would come across a white Chanel vintage classic flap in the medium with lambskin with the 24 karat gold hardware, the condition of the bag was just horrible. And understandably so, it's a vintage bag, someone used it, they loved it, but it was obvious that the bag had a lot of wear and tear. It would either be really discolored, there'd be like yellowing inside, be scuffed up everywhere, there would be dye marks, you know, on the strap from where the person was wearing it. So it would be really obvious that the bag was sort of beat up. And then on top of that, the price of the bag was also super expensive because it's Chanel, right? And it's vintage, and we know what the Chanel prices are like now. So overall, it was never the right fit. But then when I saw this pop up, I was just like, oh my God, this is like pristine vintage for a 30-year-old bag. I mean, this is stunning. So obviously I went online, I looked at their photos online. It was when they had done the live the night before, this was like a new arrival. So I knew that this probably wasn't gonna stick around for long. I went online, and I think if I remember correctly, the price for the bag was about $5,300, which is still expensive for vintage, but again, like we said, I mean, Chanel brand new prices for bags are what, like a Chanel classic flap for medium, it's like what, almost $8,000 to $10,000. So $5,300 for a vintage Chanel with 24 karat gold hardware, you know, basically looks brand new. Yeah, it was a no-brainer. So went online, saw the price, saw that the photos were accurate to the video, asked them a couple of questions. Again, look back at my other video if you want some more vintage tips, because questions are important. Did my research, and I was like, you know what, I need to have this bag. I've been looking for it, and I think my search is over. Now, one of the other reasons why I decided to go forward with Qoo Vintage, aside from the fact that obviously the bag is gorgeous and I just couldn't give it up, was the fact that the whole buying process, the cost process, I guess you could say, was so simple. So if you've ever bought from a brand overseas before, then you'll know that you have to pay customs and duties and all of that. And I don't know what your experience has been, but when I've looked at other Japanese consignment boutiques, what I've noticed is that they'll make sure to note that the price does not reflect customs and duties and taxes and all of that. Like, those kinds of things are going to be added on after the fact. So for whatever reason, that just kind of really freaked me out, because I have heard from other folks that they've ended up paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for, you know, customs. And I just was like, do I really, you know, in the past I would be like, do I really want to pay hundreds of dollars extra for whatever particular bag that I was interested in. But what was different about Qoo Vintage is that the price that they had on the bag, once you went through and put the bag in your cart and, you know, kind of started to go through the process, they actually included customs and duty charges in that final quote, which was unique. And I was just like, oh, well, that makes it really easy, because I was able to see right up front how much extra I was paying. And I think I ended up paying maybe just like $200 or so extra dollars, but that's also including tax and stuff. So it wasn't actually a lot. Either way, it was really helpful for me, because when I was interested in purchasing from other brands, whether it was from Japan or, you know, from other countries, they would always kind of put me off by saying, oh, we don't know what the customs are, so please just note that it might be more expensive. But the fact that Qoo Vintage was kind of adding that into your total cost, I thought was really helpful. The other thing that I thought was really interesting when I was going through the purchasing process with this is that you have, at least through Qoo Vintage, you had two ways to purchase the item. You can buy it through PayPal, or you can buy it through what they have called a 3D Secure. Basically their way of sort of protecting against theft or any sort of like spam issues online when you try to use your credit card. Problem is that I don't know if many credit cards nowadays still use 3D Secure. Maybe they did in the past, but all I know is that when I tried to first go through that method, my card kept being declined. So basically, after some back and forth speaking to Qoo Vintage, they basically said your card is probably just not set up with 3D Secure, so we recommend going through PayPal. And I would recommend going through PayPal. If you have PayPal, just go through that. Chances are you're also probably not set up with 3D Secure, so just to avoid that hassle, just go through PayPal. So another thing I noticed once I started to go through the PayPal purchasing process is that because I was buying my bag through Japanese yen, which would then be converted into USD, PayPal gives you two options. The first option is to go through them. The other option is that you just go through whatever the current conversion rates is, and they'll apply that to your charge. Pro tip, go for the second option. Let them just convert it. Because what I found was when I just did a quick Google search, one, I found people saying that PayPal overcharges for their conversion rate. Two, I found that the conversion rate for whatever was currently happening at that moment was relatively cheap. It wasn't that crazy of a price, and I didn't really know. I think PayPal had like a certain percentage amount that seemed kind of high. Either way, based off of what I did my research on and what I heard other people saying, figured it was probably best to just go through the second option and let them use current conversion rates. So that's what I ended up doing, and with the total price of the bag, with the conversion rate, with the customs and duties and things like that, again, I think the bag came out to about just a couple of $100 more than what the original, you know, bag price was as it was quoted. So I was really happy with that. And thankfully, the purchasing process wasn't as scary as I was thinking it was going to be. I can't say what other country experiences are like, but for somebody here in the US who was shopping with a Japanese consignment brand, Qoo Vintage really made it easy. So once I paid for the bag, I, you know, made my purchase. The bag was delivered pretty quickly. I want to say from the time that I placed the purchase to when it arrived, it was like 4 days, maybe 5 days. Honestly, I can't remember. It was pretty quick, which I was really happy about. Thankfully, I didn't have any issues with customs. I did get, as I was tracking the bag, I did get a notice that the bag was at customs, and I think it was just like held at customs like overnight, sort of like, you know, the typical length of time. Nothing, you know, no issues there. And then as soon as I'd cleared customs, it was off to me, and it arrived, like I said, in just a couple of days. When it arrived, it was really beautifully well packaged. Like, I really felt like they did a good job in making sure that the bag, you know, survived its overseas journey. Now, this bag did not come with the original dust bag or the original box, so they did give their own little flimsy dust bag and whatnot. But either way, it was still really nicely packaged, thoughtfully packaged. And when it arrived and when I unboxed it and sort of took off all the wrapping, obviously I was like super excited. Immediately was like inspecting it, and again, no damage, nothing like that. I will say though, the This is my first like real vintage, like in its authentic state sort of bag. When I bought my first ever vintage Chanel bag, and that was through Re Deluxe, that bag had come through a bag spa. I think Leather Surgeons is the bag spa that they had used, and they were, and no shade on that part at all. I mean, they were very like upfront about it on the product description that the bag had gone through a bag spa. It had kind of just had a little bit of a refresh, and at that time I was like really okay with that, simply because, you know, it was my first pre-loved purchase, first vintage purchase, and I just kind of didn't want a bag that felt like it had, you know, been through the ringer. So I really appreciated the fact that it had gone through Leather Surgeons. But when I purchased this bag, this was the first vintage bag that I was getting that had not gone through the spa process. So as the person who used this before me had it and sold it, is how I received it. So when I unwrapped this out of the box and I held it in my hand, I immediately noticed that the bag felt a little bit dry, which again makes sense. It's leather and it's a 30-year-old bag. It's gonna feel a little bit dry. And so what I immediately did when I got the bag was I kind of did a little spa treatment here at home. So I have a car and I have leather interior in my car, so I actually have a really nice high quality leather cleaner and leather conditioner. So I quickly just kind of did some like YouTube searches on like how best to clean your leather on your Chanel handbag, especially if it's in a vintage bag, and then I just, you know, use the items that I had in my house, and I did a quick little cleaning. So I used the leather cleaner to first kind of just like clean up the bag. It's interesting because when I first took out the bag, it didn't look grimy or dirty or anything like that. I mean, it was beautiful and white, but when I did that first initial cleaning with my leather cleaner, I was kind of amazed at just how immediately like bright and whiter the bag looked. So there was some microscopic layer of grime on the bag, which again is normal for a vintage bag. So doing just a quick little cleanup really helped. I went in and I did that conditioning treatment on the bag, and I think I did like 2 layers on it, and it immediately made a difference. The bag is so much softer now. It's supple, not dry at all. The dryness that I felt when it first came, none of that is there. So I would recommend that if you do buy a vintage bag that has not been through the spa or anything like that, and it's in its original condition, when you receive it, if you can, buy some really great leather conditioner and leather cleaner and just really quickly spa your own bag. Just a quick, you know, cleaning and then a conditioning. It makes a world of a difference in the bag. And then every couple of months or however you like, you can just go back in and do another little clean and another little conditioning, and it'll just help maintain the bag in the long run. It helps maintain the integrity of the leather, and it just feels nicer. Of course, the more I use it, the more my own natural hand oils touch the bag, it'll continue to help soften the leather and all of that. So definitely something that I did, and I'm really happy that I did do that. Moving forward, if I buy any other original vintage pieces, as soon as I get them, that's gonna be the first thing that I'm gonna do, is a quick little at-home spa treatment. All right, so with all that being said, would I recommend purchasing with a Japanese consignment brand, whether that's you are in Japan and you're able to pop into a shop and buy from them directly, or if for most people, if you're gonna just be able to buy it online, would I recommend it? Yes, 100%. First reason is that what I have found is that Japanese consignment stores tend to have better quality items. I don't know the reason for that. I don't know if it's just because, you know, Japanese consignment stores are sourcing from Japanese buyers, that Japanese people tend to take care of their stuff a little bit more, or maybe the Japanese just have higher standards for their consignment items. Whatever it is, I have consistently noticed that Japanese consignment items tend to be in a lot better condition than, say, European consignment brands. I'm not gonna name names, but I have looked at other brands before, and you go online and you look at the condition of some of the bags, and it's as if they had been like dragged through the streets. I mean, that's how bad some of their bags look. Now, I guess listen, they can sell those bags. Clearly there's a market. Someone out there is gonna look at that bag and say, I don't care if there's like, you know, scratches and marks and it's completely beaten up, I want that bag. But for myself, I would always just look at those bags and just think, ugh, I don't know if I want a bag that looks that worn, having to, you know, maybe send it to a bag spa, that's another couple $100. That just seemed like a lot to me. But what I noticed and have noticed consistently is that Japanese consignment brands, the condition of their vintage items are just pretty much pristine. The other thing is that they're really good on their websites with describing any problems that they might have with the bag. So if there's an odor, if there's a tiny little mark, anything like that, they will make sure that that item is marked as is, which I think is really amazing because I don't often see that in a lot of descriptions for items in some of the vintage or reselling communities out there. So the fact that they're very meticulous, I think is a really good sign. The other pro I think with buying through a Japanese consignment boutique is the fact that I think sometimes the prices can be a little bit cheaper or a little bit more competitive. So sometimes, for example, when I've looked at resellers or vintage boutiques here in the States or folks that are based in the States, sometimes the bags are a lot more expensive, even when they're vintage, right? Then when I look on the Japanese consignment stores, they tend to be a little bit cheaper. Now, it kind of depends. Sometimes I'll see prices that are a little bit high, but usually I will see that the Japanese consignment brands tend to be a little bit cheaper, or a little bit, like I said, they're a little bit more competitive in their pricing, which helps you feel a little bit better about making the purchase because you feel like you're getting a better quality item at a little bit of a cheaper price, which I think is obviously always a good thing. Now, as for cons, I think really the biggest con that I would say that I have for buying through a Japanese consignment boutique is just the fact that you have to pay customs. Obviously, if you're buying from a brand that's here in the US, then all you're paying is taxes. But when you're buying from a foreign boutique, then you have to consider custom charges. So that would be the only con, I think, because if you are working with a very particular budget and you really don't want to go above that, you know, you might feel a little uncomfortable having to pay even extra just to have the bag shipped over here, because, you know, it's different from your shipping costs, right? Because I still have to pay shipping costs for this, which I think shipping might have been like $30 or $35. So shipping cost is one thing, but then having to pay customs on top of that, like depending on your budget, depending on what you're comfortable paying, that just might be a deal breaker for you. So I think one of the biggest cons by buying through, you know, Japan or any sort of foreign boutique is just the fact that you have to pay customs. Alright guys, well that is my video for today. I'm so excited to have this beauty in my collection. Like, I bought this bag, I want to say at this point it's been maybe a month since I bought this, and I've already used her like twice, and like I want to use her so much more. I'm controlling myself because I don't want to put so much wear on the bag, but I am in love, guys. The color is so beautiful, it's perfect. Like, I think white is the perfect year-round color because obviously it's summertime right now. I can use this in the summer, I can use this in the winter whites, right? It's just such a versatile color, a neutral. It's beautiful. I'm obsessed with it. And because it's vintage, like I don't feel like I have to baby it as much. I mean, on one hand I do kind of baby it because it is vintage, but on the other hand, because it's vintage, you know, it's softened up. Like, I just feel like I don't have to baby it so much because, like, oh my god, it's so brand new, I don't want to ruin the structure, or I don't want to soften it or anything like that. It has such beautiful malleability. Like, it's just, I can just, like, it's squishable. Like, it's just such a beautiful, like, easy bag to use, and I just find myself wanting to gravitate towards it and wanting to use it more, but I'm trying to pace myself, like I said. But overall, beautiful bag. Really impressed with the experience that I had with Qoo Vintage, and I just think in general, just a Japanese consignment boutique. The condition is amazing, their customer service is amazing, they answer any questions that you have, just send them a DM. It was really easy. Yeah, this has just kind of made me really excited to buy more vintage pieces from Japanese consignment brands, and hopefully once, you know, Japan allows some more visitors, I can't wait to go back to Japan and visit some of these boutiques in person, which might not be so great for my wallet, but you know, I'm super excited for that. But yeah, this is my bag. I love it. If you guys are interested in maybe kind of what fits in a vintage Chanel medium versus newer Chanel classic flaps, let me know. I do have a medium classic flap that I bought like a year ago, so I can easily do like a comparison. If you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments below. Yeah, that is my video for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm happy to see you guys. I am back, I promise. I have a lot more videos for you guys, so please make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell notification so you never miss any of my videos, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.